And welcome back to Migration Season 2, Episode 6. Today we are finally diving into a topic that I've been wanting to cover for quite some time. We're covering the topic of non-physical healing. That is, healing yourself using the tools and the perspectives we've been covering in this series. Again, if you're brand new here, you should be able to grasp the basic ideas that we are talking about, but I will also refer to specific episodes throughout this series, so you can go back and check any information that might be a little bit too abstract to pick up from the information I'm presenting here alone. This is an area I have wanted to cover from the beginning of this show, but I felt we needed to have a number of important conversations to firmly ground us into knowing first how to tap into our awareness as it exists free from the bounds of narrative and our internal dialogue, which is an optimum state of health. And that really is what I keep pointing to on this show, a state of consciousness which is an optimum state of internal health, and the body tends to follow the mind. Really, from one perspective, this is what this entire series is centered around, entering the highest state of health that you can. But for specific instructions on meditations I recommend, go check out Part 5 of Season 1, Spaced Out, and Part 3 of Season 2, A Guided Meditation. So I want to add a note of warning here from the very beginning, and I promise I'm not trying to be dramatic at all. This technique is truly not a toy, as I found out the hard way if you go back and take a look at Episode 4 in Season 1. I don't currently actively heal other people at this point. I really wrestled with how I should even present this information, and I decided that at this point I'm only going to discuss healing yourself and not other people. The topic of healing other people can and has been so misunderstood and misused by people who have delusions of grandeur or want to profit from it. At this point, I'm not even going to go there. As far as where I'm at now, I've become quite good at healing myself, but I'll only do a healing on someone else in really rare circumstances, generally only when it is someone I am very close to, and that's because of what is involved with this technique, specifically how deeply I merge with that person. That's me, though. That's how I'm built. It's just what happens when I peel back the layers behind someone's ego. You have to be willing to tap into a very intimate core of that person and not personally identify with anything you find there. We're going to dive into all of that and more. So get comfortable, smoke them if you got them, and get ready for today's episode of Migration. I learned how to tap into healing myself and others many years ago quite naturally as I was following this path of awakening consciousness. I found, as many of you may find along this path as well, that certain abilities and insights start presenting themselves. I believe that I could have made a life for myself as a kind of energy healer, and maybe down the road I still will. You may be surprised to find, as I have, that you don't personally want to pursue some potential that opens up for you that you find access to along this path. Like I said, healing can get a bit messy, as we're going to discuss, and at least for now, I'd rather put my energy into handing these insights and tools to anyone out there who will listen. I'd rather as many people understand the mechanics of consciousness so that they can heal themselves. It seems like a better use of my time than just offering up myself as a single external resource for people to come to for help. Again, maybe down the road I will do both. Now, there are so many different methods of healing, And every tradition, every culture, every person is going to have their own take on it. What I'm offering today is the best way I can describe what I've gained access to through direct experience in my own words. So those of you in the know may go, hey, that part sounds like pranic healing or Reiki or whatever. I understand there are hundreds of different roads to get there. This is mine, free from the spiritual new age lingo, and I want you to experiment and tell me what value you find with it. Last but not least, my God, I implore you, if you are using this technique on yourself or someone else who has a serious medical condition, you should in no way stand in the way of that person receiving proper medical attention. If you're telling people who are suffering from a life-threatening problem that they just don't need a doctor, they don't need their medications, that they just need to get rid of that negative energy, you're a detriment to society, and you've missed my point here completely. We're here to help open the potential for this person or yourself to enter your own state of optimum health. You absolutely do not ever have complete utter control of someone else's state of health any more than you have control over what someone else thinks. If you're not leaving your ego out of healing, and that goes for yourself and others, you're not reaching the highest optimum potential for health, period. So let's first start with understanding this technique. Now, we've covered a notion in episode 10, season 1, Can Humans Run Through Walls?, about how reality emerges for us. At a fundamental level, reality exists as a wave of vast potential, which physicists refer to as a probability wave. When we bring our attention to this world of possibility, which we are literally doing now, right now, always, from microsecond to microsecond, our consciousness collapses this wave down to a particle. That is, our very awareness is constantly in the act of pulling a single path out from a wave of potential. In this way, we are continuously sailing through reality as it unfolds in one specific way from a billion possibilities right before our very eyes. Many physicists believe that what's actually happening is that for every possible state of reality that can unfold, there's actually another universe unfolding where we are experiencing the moment manifesting in a slightly different way. Our goal in healing is to direct our sails of awareness into a reality where we are at optimum health. But in order to do that, we have to understand the art of sailing. What is guiding that sailboat of ours? What even keeps reality seemingly stable and linear at all? I mean, if what I just suggested was true, then all things being equal, our consciousness could theoretically collapse these probability waves in an infinite number of ways. One moment you're drinking your coffee, and the next moment your coffee cup is some amorphous blob of sludge. When you find yourself in a lucid dream state, you get to play around with this notion firsthand. Reality can sort of be molded around you, and anything can change in an instant. So what's siphoning your awareness down to the only possibility which is unfolding for you right now? What dynamic is behind the wheel? We know that one of these factors that steers our experience of reality are the narratives that we hold dear. Our stories, our beliefs, our values, all boil down to information. Information which is constantly running in our internal dialogue, constantly commenting on the world and who we are. This information acts as a sort of prism which focuses a full spectrum of white light down to an individual color. As we've been exploring on this series, our repetitive thought patterns about how the world works have very real physical consequences on how the world works. We discussed how people with multiple personality disorder, for example, can literally have one personality with a very real diagnosed medical condition while the other does not. Same body, different mind, specifically different internal narratives affecting the same consciousness. and we can use those lessons to achieve incredible healing. Within this framework, an illness boils down to another narrative, a narrative that can be changed. But first, you have to understand what it is about your story of you that clung to this other story of illness. If this sounds like an oversimplification, you have to appreciate this process can get very abstract because we humans are dealing with information that can be very concrete and linear, things that we know we believe, or it can be subtle and intangible, that is, beliefs that we carry about ourselves and the world we live in that we aren't even aware of. Not to mention that more often than not, unraveling an illness may lead you into facing truths about yourself that you don't want to look at. If you are following my meditation practices or anyone like it, you will eventually uncover all of those truths that you're hiding. Also, because we are essentially dealing with information here, healing is going to be far easier if you're dealing with a condition that hasn't been labeled by someone you deem to be an expert. That is, you may find it harder to wrestle with a specific diagnosis from a trusted doctor compared to a condition that you are still unsure of. Ideally, get to that condition when it is still somewhat amorphous in your mind. Again, that does not mean you should hesitate to see a doctor for a serious ailment. With that said, there's also no narrative that cannot be dismantled, because none of them are ultimately real. So hopefully, after my little preamble here, you're going to understand why our starting place with this healing technique is going to be all focused on our story about our ailment. So these are the things you want to be aware of before you enter this healing technique. And if it helps, write or type your answers out. This is what I want you to do before you get started. I want you to relate to yourself or write out a short story about what's going on with you. Start with the beginning and explain things like, when did this condition first arise? What does it feel like? What is this condition keeping you from doing? I want you to describe all the ways this illness or this ailment, whatever it is you're facing, I want you to describe all the ways that it is impacting you. And last but not least, what are your fears around this condition? What is the worst possible thing that could happen if this persists or if this gets worse? Explain what that looks like. And also, what is the lasting effect this is having on your mood and your emotions? So here's where we're going to start using our meditation techniques that we have been picking up on this series. So what you need to do first is to get comfortable. Find a quiet space and time where you can go into your own optimal state of consciousness. That means dive beneath your own layers of narratives and self-identity and just be, as I've covered in my meditations that I've mentioned earlier. Right now, we're not doing anything with the condition that's bothering us. Do your best to set that aside just for now. You just need to stabilize yourself in that unlimited state the best that you are able to. Yes, you're going to wander, most likely. It's okay. Just gently pull yourself back from distraction and be in the now. That unfolding of reality we talked about takes place in the present moment, not the past or the future. So that is where our attention must be. It may help to see yourself and everything around you as a constant flow of white, conscious light, and just sit there. Once you feel fairly stabilized in that perfect silence, call up the overall sense you were left with about the story of your ailment that you wrote out or thought about earlier. This can feel a bit abstract at first, but you'll get the hang of it. You don't need to actually talk to yourself about your condition or think about the story you have about it. What you're doing here is trying to zero in on the vibration or the impression that you are left with from the entire condition, along with what you know and feel about it. Now, if that doesn't make sense, I want you to try to think about the lasting impression a movie leaves behind for you that you're familiar with, or a book, or even a place, or even a person. Like, When you think about a place you know really well, there's no way to call up every last detail that your mind is holding about that place. It's too much information. But you can instead call up an overall sense that place leaves with you. So now you're going to call up the overall impression this ailment leaves on you. And what you're going to do next is likely going to be met with some resistance. You're going to just allow the essence of that ailment to be. You're going to open yourself to it. Drop your defenses against it. This alone may take repeated attempts of entering a meditative space to do this properly until you can sit with the core of this condition without holding back on some level. Check your emotions. You may feel your muscles tighten when you rest your attention on this area. The deeper you can surrender in the face of this ailment, the more it will unravel. When consciousness is directed at a problem, it begins to unravel it, disintegrate it. As this happens, information will start to leak out of this problem like blood from a dying animal, and you'll start to see very clearly how this condition has been comprised of narratives all along. Now, likely it won't express itself as a neat and tidy storyline. It will possibly be much more abstract than that. You may experience this as a frequency or a sound. You may see colors. It may call up images or memories or visions of relationships from your past. Your job at this point is to do your best to remain open and at peace as this condition unravels and bleeds out information. This is very likely not going to be easy at first because it's likely going to expose something about your story, your identity, or your relationships, your life that you had sort of swept under the rug. What you are trying to do at this point is to remain passive and open. And yes, there's going to be resistance. As I said, this is going to seem counterintuitive because we are normally used to fighting against our problems and holding up barriers against all of our ailments. As this information unfolds, you may get pulled down a rabbit hole of some drama from your past. That's okay, but you're trying to remain in that present moment awareness as that drama unfolds. Watch it, but don't be carried away by it. Again, you may have to come back to this meditative space over and over again until you can do this without becoming pulled into unconscious narrative and storyline. That does not mean you're doing something wrong or you're losing some battle. You've only lost once you've given up entering this space and facing those core impressions of your ailment. So I personally use this technique for physical as well as emotional issues, and I'll tell you, there are issues from my own past, from my childhood, that I've been doing this dance with for years. That's how some of our most deep-seated issues behave. Trauma from past relationships, childhood injustices we suffered. Hell, there are people out there who will tell you that you're dealing with trauma from a past life still in this life. Now, I would strongly advise against giving that narrative much attention or energy at all. I personally won't entertain that notion for a moment myself. Your job is to deal with the life you're dealing with right now, the one that's in front of you. Don't complicate your healing with fantasies about dramas that happened in some other incarnation. Again, when I cautioned you earlier about translating this technique to heal someone else with, doing this technique with another ego, and yes, that is totally possible to do that. Here's where it can get messy. Here's where you can pick up another person's vague, subtle impressions of pain and suffering on such a subtle level that you won't even know you've carried it back with you. And yes, there are ways to psychically, you could say, cleanse yourself of any information that latches onto your ego from someone else. But for right now, we're not going to go in there. We're just focused on healing ourselves. So ideally, in the end, you are able to sit in your own center of power, that state of consciousness unbound by any limitations and storylines. And when you bring your attention to this ailment, you'll know that there is nothing left to unravel. You'll feel that it has no substance any longer. If you sense any lasting weight or essence to this ailment on this level of awareness, then let your attention fall to any part of it that has been left untreated, any part that still remains as some tangible fabric in your mind's eye. So as you do this, you will start seeing real changes to this ailment on the physical level in your body. It's possible that the physical representation of this condition may not vanish completely. There are some dynamics in this world that appear to be left out of our control, and that's okay. There's a lesson in that as well. All you can do is follow this technique as far as you can take it, and let it be after that. Let it do what it is that it's going to do. Do all the healing within your current level of ability and be done with it. That last part can throw some healers for a real loop. They don't want to let some things go. They are driven to keep hacking away at some ailment with their healing techniques, and they fail to see that obsession as an issue in and of itself. All right. That is all we're going to cover on this topic right now. I do hope this helps. We're going to continue looking at this dynamic we carry with consciousness from a number of perspectives, and each time we do so, it adds another glimpse into the larger picture of what it is that we are as aware beings in this world. And this topic specifically of healing is so large. It's why I waited down the road to even discuss this, because again, we needed a lot of grounding through a lot of these other discussions that we've already had on this topic. So if something has not made sense to you, if you are working with these ideas and something is too abstract or it just doesn't make sense, please reach out to me. I will try to get back to you in a timely manner. I may direct you back to another episode again and just say, hey, check out this discussion here. I'm not blowing you off. I'm just trying to show you a more full discussion that's illustrated with visuals that may help you understand better than what I might just write back to you directly. So again, reach out with your questions. I always appreciate those. And those of you who have been liking and subscribing to this channel, that really does help me grow this channel and get a little bit more support from YouTube. They start spreading my channel out a little bit more each time the numbers go up a little bit, so that's very much appreciated. So again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care, stay happy, stay healthy, peace be with you. So let's first with, I mean, it's not even the way sentences work. Please, if you're planning on translating this technique into healing someone else, and you're dealing with someone with a serious medical Huh? Fuck you.